And you're listening to Triple J. Right now, I want to introduce you to a guy who you might have seen in your social feeds in the last fortnight, particularly if you are in the gaming world. Right now, you are hearing the soundtrack to a puzzle adventure game called The Master's Pupil. It was designed and illustrated by Pat Naoum, who painted this video game frame by frame over the course of 7 years. It is set inside Claude Monet's eyeball, and here to tell you all about it and take on my first, Pat, welcome to Triple J.
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Congratulations. This is huge.
Yes, it's massive. It's very strange and life-changing, and it's a big moment for me.
Yeah, 7 years hand painting is a long time. Firstly, how's your hand? RSI?
Look, I've had to ice it on several occasions. You know, it went through, me and my wrist have been through a lot together, and we're learning. We're learning how to deal with it.
No, take us back. What made you pick up that paintbrush 7 years ago? And was the intention always to put it into a video game context?
It's a kind of a strange question because I didn't intend to make a hand-painted game. I just wanted to make a game. And I originally saw these like close-up images of a human eye, and it looked like this like fascinating landscape. And I thought a game set in that would be super interesting. So I thought then, who would be in this eye? You know, what kind of person would this eye belong to? And I thought maybe fictional. But then I came across Claude Monet, and he had cataracts. And so that would be kind of an interesting, like, big bad for the end of the game. You know, that's kind of led me to hand painting it because I thought I could match it with his style, follow kind of his, like, super interesting life, and hand paint a game from scratch, basically.
And what about Claude Monet? What kind of draws you to his work so much so that you wanted to create an entire world out of his art history?
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy, I think. But that was kind of what I found out later, you know, once I kind of researched him. But I think Claude Monet is one of those strange artists that everybody likes. Nobody looks at a Claude Monet and goes, oh, yuck, you know.
Water lilies, gross.
Yeah, that's weird. That doesn't make any sense, you know. Like everyone's kind of looks at him and goes like, yeah, that's beautiful. It's like undeniably beautiful. So that's the kind of pull to me. And then once I started researching him, and he had just this like fascinating life, you know, he went to war, he almost died of typhoid, he like lost 2 wives and a son. He kind of had this like crazy life, and he found fame in his own, you know, lifetime, which is kind of rare for older painters. He was just a fascinating guy in all ways.
Yeah, and the game is kind of biographical, but it's also kind of a puzzle adventure game. As best you can on radio, how does it work? How do you play the game? What's the goal?
So it's a 2D side scroller. So you think of like Mario, you're just like running along the side of the game. But then there's all these kind of strange color-based puzzles. So there's these kind of jets of smoke that you jump into and it can change your color. And then depending on these kind of strange sniffy door things that you come across, you get to kind of interact with them, and they kind of judge whether you can go past them or not.
Yeah.
So it's these kind of puzzles that are standalone. But the game itself doesn't have any language. It doesn't have any kind of text or dialogue. You just kind of experience this and go with it.
And it's 7 years of hand paintings.
Oh, yeah.
These are kind of, they're not, and you're not ripping off Claude Monet either. These are kind of inspired by, if you will.
Alongside his paintings.
Yeah. How do you take him from the paper onto our screens? How does that work?
So it actually starts on the screen. So I build all the shapes and of the ground that the player runs on. I take them, I print them out, and then I paint it over the top of those so they would be like really precise, add all that kind of real world texture, and then scan them back in with a film negative scanner. So it was like really, really high res, you know, trying to get as much detail as I could basically.
Pat Naoum is with you on Triple J right now. He is the web developer and artist behind the new game, The Master's Pupil. This is going gangbusters right now. Pat, I want to get a little bit more of your history though, particularly your gaming history. What have you chosen for my first?
I have chosen my first video game world.
Ooh, okay, let's get into it after this on Triple J. Here on Triple J Mornings, I'm Lucy Smith, and we are joined by Pat Naoum, who is an artist and video game designer who's just released his first game, The Master's Pupil. Dan in Melbourne, you said, ask Pat to hook me up with a Steam key. Been eyeing this game off. Cheeky. Hey, let's do this.
Okay. First things first.
This is the first day of my life.
First time, just like seeing her for the first time again.
My first.
Now, Pat, as someone who spent 7 years creating a video game, I think a lot of people would want to know where your inspiration comes from. Where did gaming start for you? And for my first, you've chosen your first video game world. Take us there. Where are we?
This was, mid-90s. I was a little kid, I'm talking 6 or 7, and we got the Zelda Ocarina of Time, and it was this fantastic game, but it was one of the first open world games. So games that come from, you're running around side scrolling like Mario, but now you're kind of in this entire world that you get to run around on.
What had you played prior to that? Why did this kind of shift your focus and blow your mind a little bit?
So I had started playing a few games really little on the Sega that was like Sonic and stuff like that. And this game was amazing because it was this open world experience where you could run anywhere, you could do anything. And it was a digital world that you could play in.
And what's your earliest memory of playing this game? Who did you play it with?
It was definitely sitting on the ground because you had to. That's the way you played the Nintendo 64 when you were a little kid. Cross-legged on the ground, as close to the TV as physically possible.
Because the cord, you had the cord.
Yes,
it wasn't
it was like
wireless.
A meter long. Yeah, you can't just sit back with your giant, HD TV. It was a tiny little thing that you just sat up as close as possible to. And me and my brothers would sit there. The 4 of us sometimes would be sitting there staring at it, trading the controller back and forth and fighting over it. But that was our life for so long.
I'm not familiar with Zelda, I'll be completely honest with you, but is it a competitive game?
No, far from it, in fact. You're kind of it's a role-playing game, an RPG. You get to kind of jump in and just pretend to be this character Link as you're running around in this world and, helping people and solving problems and that kind of thing.
So it wasn't causing any sibling arguments, let's say that.
No, other than the time spent, because everyone wanted more time on it and we had to battle over that.
There was something about this game that was a particular bonding moment for you and your siblings.
Yes.
What was that?
So me and my little brother would often go to this certain spot in the game, this desert world, and it was loosely based on Spanish and Mexican kind of cultures. But it had this wonderful song in it, the Geurdo Valley theme song. And we would literally just run there, get off the horse, and then just leave the controller and just sit there listening to this song.
I love this. It kind of reminds me of how people would play Grand Theft Auto but just actually cruise around. And
just listen to the
just
radio.
hang out.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was the first version of that.
Yeah.
And there would just be this one area where the song would play on loop because it was the intro to this world. So you'd sit there at this valley and this giant rope bridge and you would just pause and just hang out while the character just sat there.
I feel like a lot of people are going to get around this right now. You are taking us to Geurdo Valley. Should we play the song? Should we do it?
Love
Okay.
to.
All right. Pat Naoum joins you on My First right now, a game developer himself and taking you into his first video game world. We're doing it right here. Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, Triple J. If you're just joining us, you might be wondering what the hell you have stumbled upon here on Triple J Mornings. Pat Naoum is with you. He is a Sydney video game designer who has just released his debut video game, 7 years in the making. It is called The Master's Pupil, but we're going back to the very beginning for him, his first video game world. Right there, you just heard from Ocarina of Time, The Legend of Zelda, Geurdo Valley, 0439 757 555. Someone saying, hell yes, fellow Ocarina of Time kid. Love this so much. Never thought I'd hear it on the Jays. And someone else, yes, iconic. I raise you though. GoldenEye, pause screen. Pat Naoum, tell me, how did you feel hearing that one out? What is it bringing up for you?
It really hits a nostalgic tone every single time because trying to find a song for this, I was looking back and then I remembered this one and it hit me so hard. It's such a banger.
Music really is such an important part, or sound design is such an important part of the video game process. Now, you have just released your first video game. It is called The Master's Pupil and the music is just incredible. Because like you said, there's no text as part of this video game. Tell us about the composer and how you put this all together.
Well, the composer is Stephen Shouten, aka Misty Lanes, and it's this kind of such a wonderful thing to have him because he was the only other person like creative, that worked on the game with me. So I painted and coded and everything. But when it came to the music, I had so many other friends that were more talented musically than me. So I wanted to kind of bring them in on it. So yes, it's a languageless game. And so there's nothing kind of telling you how to feel or what to experience, And so the music was always this emotional like backbone for the game. And I've known Stephen now for 10, 12 years or something. And we kind of got into this like really great creative talks about what and how we could do these, projects of ours. And he knocked it out of the park because to write an emotional backbone for such a strange game, it's difficult. It's a difficult task to do. And he just nailed it. He nailed it in every sense of the word.
The game is just a sonic and visual journey. It dropped in July. What's the reaction been like since? Because it's gotten so much traction online, but how have people responded to it?
Overwhelmingly positive. I was expecting this game to be kind of little and come out to a small group of people, but now I'm here on Triple J talking to you, and and I'm looking down the barrel of like several posts that went to like 1 million views, and so
6 million views and counting.
Yes,
some of them. By the way.
that last one went right off. And so it's been this kind of bizarre thing where I was expecting to kind of release my little arty game and just go thumbs up, good job, let's go to the next one. But instead, there's been this kind of ginormous influx of positive wishes and people being inspired. That's been, I think, the biggest thing. I heard about this mother and her children reached out to me, said that they started playing the game and then they had a crafternoon afterwards. And it just broke my heart. It was just the most heartwarming thing I could think of. It's like, I love crafternoons. If I can generate them in other people, box ticked.
Honestly, job done. And how do you want people to feel when they play this game?
Someone said that it hit them in this kind of like really deep nostalgic kind of sense, because I think this is the first time someone's going to see close-up painting from when they were a little kid. People like finger paint and they get like right up close to paint and then they never touch paints again. So you're never really getting up that close. And so my game's kind of like scanned in like miniature, like all these paintings are like really, really little. So they're kind of quite close and like the texture of the paint is really obvious and really prominent. And I think it just hits people differently. If you can experience that, as well as just the puzzles and the music and the sound, like just have a go and tell me what you think, because I'm interested to hear what anyone feels and says about it.
The game is The Master's Pupil. It is a hand-painted puzzle adventure game, 7 years in the making, set inside Claude Monet's eyeball. It comes from the brain of this guy, Pat Mayoon, who's been with you on Triple J. The Master's Pupil is available now via Steam for Mac and Windows and Nintendo Switch. Pat, thank you so much for hanging out and congratulations again.
Thank you so much, Lucy. It's lovely to be here.